Morning, everybody, and welcome to the tail end of February. Yes, indeed. 2 months are already gone, which is absolutely crazy. But anyway, we've got a crazy business interview, spotlight interview with us today. We've got Wes from Confidential. Wes, tell us about your business.
My business. I thought you were going to ask me about where I'd been in January and February, but no.
Well, tell me about your
Yeah,
business first, and then you can tell me where you've been in Jan and Feb.
so we're a strategy first branding agency in Nottingham with a kind of a huge backstory globally. It's transatlantic really. So we have a lot of like international client. And as I was briefly discussing before, struggle to really get local clients. So we've got quite a big roster for a really small company. The confidential element comes from the business starting out in New York back in 2006 through a kind of a collective approach, long before kind of remote working, collective working. This was basically a series of guys that had come together from different businesses and kind of assemble like Avengers onto a project or a business, do the job, and then come back out. But we actually had it as a white label business, so that's where the confidential aspect comes from. Is that we go into businesses as a group, as a squad, do the work and then leave. And obviously then that sits under their domain. But the irony is, I think the more we did that and the more successful we were less confidential than we actually ever ever intended. So whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know, but we're still going. So and it's 2025 now. So
Fantastic. We were chatting before, you did a degree in fashion
yeah, it's
at Knots and ended up in New York. Go
Mhm.
on, tell me this. Tell me the backstory.
I mean, we could sit for 3 hours in a pub on that one, but we'll fast track it. Yeah, so I weirdly ended up in art college because I didn't realize at the time, but I had dyslexia, so I didn't get credentials to get into college by doing what I was supposed to do or what I wanted to do. So I've always been creative, always had a backstory. Did a degree, did an art foundation course, and I will say this, and this is going to impact the story. Like every twisting point of my life to date has been influenced by a female, and it's a strange one, but it's true. And me being me, was flirting around the girls in the knitting side of the college, and I was just trying to mess around on a knit machine, at lunchtime. So I'd go back, and obviously there's a girl I was interested in, so I used to go back. And then over time, this couple of weeks, this lady who ran the course was watching me the whole time. She was called Geraldine. I don't think she's alive anymore, bless her. And came over to me and she's like, "You've got a natural talent for knit. Like you can knit." And I was like, "Whatever." Do you know what I mean? Like alpha boy at that age. And she kept pressing me, and she said, "Look, no, seriously, like you've got 6 weeks before collection, like you want to put stuff in." And I was like, "You know what, whatever, I'll do it." So I did. So I put a collection together in 6 weeks, and then that's when I got spotted by Nottingham Trent Uni. So they came to my collection, my fashion show, and saw me, and then literally offered me a place instantly. And that was kind of like the gateway into higher education for me, because at that point I didn't have the credentials to get in. I couldn't get a C, anything higher than a D in English and maths, whether at night school, and I'm probably showing my age there, night school or extra. I sat it 3 times. So I technically have four D's in English and maths. It's just mad. So, but that got me into uni, and then I got into university. Yes, it was local to home at that point, but I was staying on friends' couches and whatever. And then an opportunity came up in New York. I butted heads with my tutor a few times, another female, because I wanted to create wall hangings and knit with like rubber and wire and things like this. And they wanted me to knit sweaters, jumpers, hats, and I wasn't down with that. But that gave me an opportunity to get in front of an internship opportunity. And that internship opportunity was for American Eagle, which obviously was in New York. And again, there's a backstory to that, but we'll fast track through that. And I ended up getting it. I proved everyone wrong, and I ended up getting it. And so, the year 2000, January, I flew out. Unbeknown to me, what was ahead of me. But yeah, I was 20-year-old going into New York, really, with not a clue. And then that had an impact as well. I think 6 months later, the company itself wasn't doing well. Ended up closing down all the freelance and all the interns, and I was an intern at that time. But luckily, a guy called Frank Osman. took me on as a as I guess what would he be? I guess the you call it, it's not an apprentice, but yeah, it's basically a paid placement rather than just an internship. And I started out that journey there, and then fast tracked that. I left there, went into Levi's, uh, and then I moved into Puma, and I helped launch Puma North America Kids at 22. So that was mad. Obviously, in between that, you've got 9/11, so that changed my life completely. Being there and understanding, the effect of life really and the importance of life. And then you move through fashion. So I started then. I got into DKNY. I worked for Armani Exchange, and then I kind of sidestepped into kind of the urban side of fashion. So I came across a guy called Damon John, and you may know him. He's on Shark Tank, and he influenced my life massively. Like, introduced me to brand in a different respect. So you imagine up to this point, I've been in fashion. I've been creating garment shapes. I've been looking at stitch. I've been looking at silhouettes. And then getting into the world of Damon John, you start to understand brand and you start to understand how he builds brands and what he built from the likes of Fubu and the other labels that he'd created. And that's where my kind of addiction started. And I didn't really realize it that I wanted to move into brand and strategy, even back then. So I worked for him for about 4, 5, 6 years, directly or indirectly. Still talk to him now. We still have that relationship, and I'm potentially going to do more work with him later in the year. But that got me into the transition to brand. So then I started dating another girl called Sam, and then she was actually in an agency. So I then started to see the design agency side of life. So the more I understood it, we started then taking work together, and we'd worked on a few companies, clients like Mountain Dew, and we'd done events, as a collective of me and her. So again, another girl just moved me then into the marketing advertising side of life, and that was it. And then I was there. I built my way through, as in position wise up to director level, and then yeah, I guess 2012 hit. And I had some, there was two women in my life that impacted me there. One was close to me, and the other one was my mum. And my mum, took ill, and that was it. I wrapped up 12 years of New York, came back, and started a whole life again. So there's a lot more to that, but yeah, I ended up in brand. I ended up working in a company called SME. It's now merged, but they were one of America's biggest sports branded agencies. So that's where I got into sports at that point. Heavily understood brand. Worked with the Miami Marlins. We rebranded them, the Yankees. You name it. We worked with Beckham. And that's really where I started understanding brand to the level I do now at that point. And then sadly, that was kind of pulled away from me, so I had to start again, and that's why I'm here now.
Fantastic. What a really interesting story to share. So we're talking about brands and business,
Yeah.
really. What's the power of a brand for? So let's just put this out. I have a 12 million pound business.
Mhm.
Let's say that, or even £2 million business.
Yeah.
What's the power of my brand?
The power of your brand is what your customers say about it. It don't really matter about what you're worth or what you cost or anything else. The power, sadly, the power is in the customer's minds and not in your hands. So a brand is basically what the customers say about you. They own you, and you can't change that. And that's where I think a lot of people try and get it wrong. The new theory of brand actually comes from that. So I'm trained by a guy called Martin Numia. I used to teach for those guys. He founded, or he helped with Apple, Google, Method, Hewlett Packard, basically that Silicon Valley movement. And his theory was about creating basically you creating a customer first. So you create the customer, which then creates the brand, and the brand then creates the company, and the company then goes back into so that's the new way of working. What it used to be back in the day, or what I'm saying is probably 2 generations ago, is like we'd create a company which would then create a brand which would then create a customer. And it was really, you were always trying to basically feed this customer, but really what's happened over time, if we think about behavior now, is the customer owns us. So if they say something bad about us, they leave a bad perception in someone's mind, Therefore, your brand value devalues, right? You become negative. But if you leave it positive, then obviously your brand's going to grow. And the more that grows, the more people tell each other. And then the wealth is actually in the customer, not actually in your company. And that's where I think a lot of people get this wrong.
That's a really interesting concept. So, how does the customer
Mm.
own the brand, or how does the I said no. I'll rephrase that question if that's okay.
Mm.
So, how does the company influence the customer?
So you start by designing a customer. So again, another flip of tradition. We normally, we've been taught in the past to look at demographics, and which is correct, and look at life situations and what influences our customer. But we've used data to create one. So 9 times out of 10, anyone would do it, and it's not wrong. It's just not the way to improve the perception of you in the customer's mind. So what used to happen, we take this data collection, say, right, these are all the people that shop from us, and we're just going to keep aiming at those guys. So we can create a picture about, who they are, what they do, what their age, where they live. And that's this demo that we were all kind of used to. But what we do now, again, flipping it, is we create an ideal customer. So we paint a picture of the customer that's going to be perfectly aligned to our product service organization, and it's going to benefit them. So then we look at value propositions to them and how it's going to benefit their lives, meet their pain, reduce their pains, meet their gains. And once you've got that, then you design a brand into that customer. Then that's the flip. And I think as soon as we start there, so we design the ideal customer, and then we design a brand or product or service to meet that customer's expectation, and therefore then everything knits together and it works. And then you create a company that then obviously fuels and it feeds back in. And I think that's the change on a lot of this.
That's a really interesting thought process.
Mhm.
So, what would happen if I've got an existing company? It's 20 years old.
Yeah.
It's got a logo. It's got a customer base.
Mhm.
So, but I want to grow.
Yeah. So you want to scale.
Do I want to scale? Yeah, I want to scale. And one of the areas is through brands. So, do I actually go out and actually then um, I kind of know my customers, but I want to go into a different area. So basically, what you're saying is you actually create an avatar of that for that.
Yeah, for that ideal person that you want to aim for. And this can help with, I mean, that could be using your logic there. This could be a company that's already been around, like you said, but they're creating a new product. And it's once we've got this idea for a new product, we then create an audience for that product. So when we go to market, we know who we're aiming at. We don't just say, right, we've got a new product here. Let's use our existing data to aim into that. It doesn't work that way. Like you can grow and scale by actually introducing a new product or service that hits a completely different audience. You know what I mean? That you
Yeah,
then
yeah.
use the design and then feed into that. So this theory works along product releases as well as rebrand or refreshes. But back to your other point, you could then refresh your brand. So you could do a repositioning exercise, which would then take your existing entity and its existing audience and move it into a new domain. You're never going to lose your older customer unless you really disgruntle them, right? Because you've got 20 years of allegiance towards each other. Um, but yeah, so that I think that's where a kind of a repositioning exercise would come in to align you to a new audience.
I mean, we always talk of brands. I mean, sort of like, you've got the Nike tick, you've got everything like that. But brand loyalty is still huge for the consumer, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, massively. Yeah, it's. I think when you're talking about brand loyalty, you're talking about like recognition of other people using and interacting with a said brand, so then they can align to it. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's huge. Like again, if we rephrase branding as the perception that we leave behind or the perception that we aim to give, which is what brand actually is. It's not your product, your logo, your color. It's nothing to do with that. It's about the brand is this bit you can't touch that you leave with somebody. And if we take that as an analogy, then the more people that we do that to as a company, the more value our brand's going to grow. Because if I start wearing, it's like Prime, look at Prime as an example just recently. Yes, it's dipped and it's gone again now, but Prime was this such demand because it had found its customer, and they created such demand from it that everyone wanted to buy into it, because it left this perception that it was the greatest thing around. And it wasn't even about the product, what was in the bottle. It was about the bottle design and who it was by, and having kids wanted to be associated to that. So then the value there came from, in your terms, the brand value came from that demand because everyone wanted it. So the value itself, you know, grew as in a brand value.
That's what's really interesting here. You're using this word a lot, which we actually use as coaches.
Mhm.
Is the word align.
Yeah, it's
So,
huge.
so develop that a little bit more for us, Wes.
So anyone that will work with me ever will, everyone will come to me, and 9 times out of 10, they've come with problems like you've suggested or you've mentioned. Oh, we need to scale. We're at an airlock. We can't break through. So we need to push through this airlock. We can't. We've been doing it for 5 years, not managed. And I say, well, the first thing that this thing's going to do to you, a workshop with me is going to do to you, is we're going to align everyone. And the analogy is that as if you've only got C-suite trying to break through, and you can probably see my screen now, but to the people that are listening, I'm pushing through the top of the screen. If you've only got 6 or 7 people doing that, you're never going to break it. And that's normally the case with a C-suite, right? You've got top where we need to go here, and it's never going to happen. But if you align everyone in the business to all push behind you, and then eventually that ceiling is going to break because everyone's pushing in the right direction, right? And that comes back to alignment. So alignment to me, and whether you've listened to me before on other podcasts, whatever, like alignment to me is the most valuable thing you're ever going to have in business. If ever, and it's such an undervalued word in my mind. Like if everyone's pushing in the right direction, and yes, we've heard it and it's cliche, but if everyone's pushing in the right direction, we will break that airlock and we will scale. And alignment is key for everything, really. Alignment to your customer, aligned to your brand, your business purpose, mission, vision. Everyone needs to know where they're doing or what they're doing and why they're doing it, I think. And once you understand that, then the business itself will start growing itself. Like if everyone in your business knows who they are, what they do, and why they matter, then they can articulate that and they can make decisions on their own behalf without having C-suite above them micromanaging them, because everyone knows why we're doing it. Everyone knows that should we partner with this person? Should we partner with this agency? Should we develop this product? If everyone knows what the purpose of the business is and why they're doing it, it allows them to have a quick litmus test of whatever that scenario is, to then bring it to the table and say, yes, it does meet our purpose. So we can bring it to the table, and we can then have a discussion about, is this right for our company and should we buy into it, or should we release it? So yeah, alignment to me is literally the number one thing, and you'll get it if you do exercises and frameworks to make sure you're all aligned and you're pushing in the right way.
Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So, final question:
Hmm.
what's next for Wes?
What's next for Wes? Yeah, I don't know. We've got a few things happening. I'm currently piloting an accelerator workshop in hospitality, which I feel, just from my experience and years in the industry, it's kind of an untapped industry within brand, right? As if if we're understanding the perception of what we leave behind or what we give is what brand is. Hospitality is the number one thing where everyone has an opinion. So trying to make that and a positive opinion to help businesses grow within the hospitality sector is huge for me. So we're piloting that. We're starting that regionally. That's a 3-day workshop face to face, and then we've got 2 outer classes. Um, it's run by a fellow strategist who I work with, both trained by Marty Numia. So you're getting Apple-esque frameworks there to use. So we're just finishing that off, and that's gone down really well. But yeah, I think the year ahead is a lot more, a lot more travel. Sadly, like as much as I love to say it, I don't. Traveling's hard on the road, and But yeah, there's a big strategy ahead. We've got some big clients, some big news happening. Recently we've done work with Google, and that product's going to release later in the year. We've done a rebrand of those. So hopefully we'll just get a bit more exposure in knots. But as I said earlier, like we find it hard to get Nottingham or regional clients. I don't know why this is. So a lot of my time is spent in these 4 frames and on Zoom and getting on planes and going to meet them. So yeah, I guess that's on our horizon. I've been working 5, 6 years now to make that happen, and I've still not succeeded, which is a good or bad thing. I don't know, but yeah, that's on us.
Brilliant. Wes, thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for sharing those insights. That was really cool. Thank
Yeah,
you.
appreciate your time. Have a good day.